As far as the season goes, the final total was
77,381.
That is unreal.
The final weigh-in number was in
77,381. That's just 1 week's cleanup. The season total, a mind-blowing $14 million. Our season total is 73.81.1 for the season, worth just under $15 million. But as his crew celebrated, Parker Schnabel was staring at a map, his stomach in knots. He knew the gold that made them rich was almost gone. His solution was to spend every penny on a new claim. A legendary spot that promised $160 million in gold. But this promise was about to become a curse that would almost bankrupt him. 14 million reasons to worry. Parker Schnabel stood on the edge of his claim, looking out at the torn-up landscape that had made him a fortune. It's funny when you think about it. This barren, muddy world had coughed up 8,000 ounces of pure gold. That's 500 pounds of yellow metal, enough to fill a large suitcase and worth a staggering $14 million. This was the kind of seasoned miner's dream about, the kind that goes down in the history books. His crew was on top of the world, packing up equipment with the kind of satisfaction that only comes from a job well done. They had pushed themselves through 16-hour days, running their 2 massive wash plants, Big Red and Sloofer, nearly non-stop. They had moved mountains of dirt, literally. Water coming your way. Really nice even water out of there. That is, we're talking about processing thousands upon thousands of tons of earth. A volume that could bury a football field several feet deep. All to get that precious gold. For most people, this would be a time for a massive celebration. But Parker wasn't most people. As he watched the smiles on his crew's faces, a cold knot of worry was twisting in his gut. He knew something they didn't. A secret that kept him staring at the ceiling during the short northern nights. The easy gold was gone. Scribner Creek. The claim that had been so unbelievably good to them was tapped out. The pay dirt that was simple to get to had been dug, washed, and accounted for. What was left was buried deeper, hidden under more waste rock, and would cost a fortune in fuel and time to get to. The mining business is a cruel game that way. Just when you think you've mastered it, the ground humbles you. Parker had seen it happen to other crews 100 times. One season they're on top, the next they're packing up and going home broke. The single question that separates the winners from the losers is always the same. Where do you dig next? The weight of that question was crushing. His crew, these people who had become his extended family, depended on him. They had mortgages, kids in college, and bills to pay. Their livelihoods were tied directly to his ability to find gold. On top of that, he had built this larger-than-life reputation. He was the young gun, the mining prodigy who couldn't lose. Millions of people watched him on television, expecting him to pull off miracles season after season. But here's the thing about miracles. They don't happen when you're digging in barren ground. He knew he was at a crossroads. He could either play it safe, stay at Scriber Creek and watch his multi-million-dollar operations slowly bleed out, or he could make a move so big, so risky that it could either secure their futures forever or ruin them all in a single season. This pressure led him to start thinking about a place whispered about in hushed tones around the Klondike, Dominion Creek. Part of the whole idea of buying this place was we'd be able to recoup some of the purchase price by selling stuff, and we have yet to do that. That plant's actually worth like $1 million. It wasn't just some old-timer's tale. Geological reports from serious experts backed it up. The ground there was supposedly still loaded with placer gold deposits. Get this. The estimates were that Dominion Creek could hold over $160 million worth of gold. That's more than 10 times his best season ever. It was the kind of money that changes not just your life, but the lives of your children's children. It was the ultimate prize. But there's always a catch, and this one was a monster. The price tag for this legendary claim was a jaw-dropping $15 million. The point of no return, $15 million. That's more than his crew had just earned in their record-breaking season. It was a sum of money so large it's hard to even wrap your head around. It was a king's ransom, and it was the asking price for Dominion Creek. For weeks, Parker was tormented by the decision. He paced his small cabin night after night, running the numbers, looking at maps, and trying to see the future. The logical side of his brain screamed that it was pure insanity. I'm still just really hoping we made the right decision with Australia Creek. We're in it now. I know. Like I wonder if at the end of the season we'll be like we should have not done that. There's a good chance. You don't bet the entire company on a single piece of ground. No matter how good the stories are, the history of the Klondike is paved with the broken dreams of miners who went all-in and lost. But that gut feeling, that miner's instinct that had guided him this far was telling him something else. It was whispering that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You see, Parker didn't get to where he was by playing it safe. He built his empire by taking smart, calculated risks. But this wasn't just another risk. This was jumping off a cliff and hoping you could build a plane on the way down. After agonizing over the choice, he finally brought in his most trusted crew members, the guys who had been with him through the mud and the breakdowns. He laid it all out for them. The dwindling gold at Scribner, the massive potential of Dominion, and the terrifying $15 million price tag. The room was silent. They could stay and watch their operations slowly fade away, or they could roll the dice on a dream that could make them all rich beyond their wildest imaginations. The debate went late into the night. His foreman, Alex, asked the tough questions. What if the ground was different? What if their equipment couldn't handle it? What if the goal wasn't where the reports said it was? Parker didn't have perfect answers because there weren't any. That's what makes it a gamble. But in the end, the decision was his. He made the call. He would buy Dominion Creek. The moment he signed those papers and authorized the $15 million wire transfer, there was no turning back. We're more than halfway through the ground, nearly 4 million square feet. Now our whole season depends on keeping 2 plants running as long as possible. That money, the result of a year of back-breaking labor, vanished from his account. He was now the owner of Dominion Creek with all its promise and all its problems. The mood was a strange mix of excitement and pure terror. As the crew packed up the last of their gear, they were leaving the familiar ground of Scribner Creek behind, heading into the unknown. The long convoy of heavy machinery and trucks snaking its way to the new claim was unusually quiet. Everyone on that crew knew their lives had just changed forever. When they finally arrived, Parker's heart sank. The place was massive, sprawling over a vast and complicated terrain. And it was completely undeveloped. There were no roads, no pads for the wash plants, no fuel storage, no workshops, nothing. It was a blank slate in the middle of nowhere, and they would have to build a multi-million-dollar mining operation from absolute scratch. The cost of building that infrastructure alone would be astronomical. But that wasn't even the worst part. Dominion's cruel joke. The problem started immediately, and they were worse than Parker could have ever imagined. It turns out Dominion Creek's ground was nothing like Scriber's. Instead of solid earth, they found themselves fighting a swamp. Large sections of the claim were a muddy, unstable mess. Moving their massive, multi-ton equipment became a daily battle. Dump trucks weighing over 50 tons would sink into mud that seemed to have no bottom. Dozers got stuck constantly. A simple task that should have taken 20 minutes would turn into a 5-hour rescue operation, burning thousands of dollars in diesel fuel and precious time. The crew's frustration was boiling over. They were gold miners, not a road construction crew fighting a losing war against mud. To make things work, they had to build miles of new roads and clear huge areas just to set up their wash plants. I'm hoping Parker sees this the same way I do. We got a mountain of mud to move. If we don't do something about it and get on it and stay on it, we're certainly not going to be slewing this ground this season. Every piece of pay dirt had to be hauled over much longer distances, which sent their fuel costs into the stratosphere. Every hour they spent building and fixing was an hour they weren't washing gold. In the mining business, time is literally money, and they were bleeding both at a terrifying rate. The doubt started to creep into the crew's eyes. Parker could feel it. He felt it, too. Annoying fear that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. But he was the leader. He couldn't show it. He had to project an unbreakable confidence even as his $15 million dream was sinking into the mud. Desperate to get some gold flowing, Parker made a risky call. He ordered the team to push production by 20%. He figured if they could just force more dirt through the wash plants, the gold would have to show up eventually. More dirt, more gold. Simple math, right? But his crew leader, Alex, warned him. Pushing the machines that hard in these new awful conditions was asking for trouble. Parker didn't listen. He was the boss and he was going to will this operation into success. At first, it seemed to work. The plants were roaring, processing more material than ever before. But then the breakdown started. They came fast and furious like a series of knockout punches. A conveyor belt snapped. Then a feeder jammed solid. Then the main water pump completely gave out. These weren't small fixes. They were catastrophic failures that brought the entire operation to a dead stop. One of the big things that he is going for him here is hard rock mining. Normally you spend a lot of money with them drilling and blasting rock. Each hour of downtime was costing them tens of thousands of dollars in potential gold. As if the ground and the equipment conspiring against them wasn't enough, the weather turned vicious. Being at a higher elevation, Dominion Creek had its own brutal weather patterns. Heavy, relentless rains turned the muddy ground into a thick, soupy quicksand. The constant moisture wreaked havoc on their machines, causing even more breakdowns and more expensive repairs. Some days they couldn't work at all, forced to sit in their trucks and watch the rainfall, knowing that every single drop was washing their profits down the drain. The numbers were becoming a horror story. Millions invested, thousands more spent every single day, and they had almost no gold to show for it. The initial test cuts were coming up with results so bad they were almost unbelievable. The $1 million turnaround. The first few cleanouts were beyond discouraging. They were devastating. After weeks of fighting mud, rain, and constant breakdowns, their first major batches of dirt came up nearly empty. You have to understand what this means. They had burned through countless hours of labor and tens of thousands of gallons of fuel, pushing their equipment to the breaking point, all for a handful of worthless gold flakes. The mood in the camp was grim. Parker's $15 million gamble was looking like a total bust. And the red numbers on his spreadsheets showed he was on a collision course with bankruptcy. Sets us up so well for the next few years. I really want to thank you all, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, and I hope that every one of you guys wants to come back because every one of you guys has a spot here next year. But then just as things seemed their darkest fate threw them a lifeline. While digging in a new area, the crew noticed a change. The dirt had a different color and texture, a subtle sign only experienced miners recognize. After so many failures, no one wanted to get their hopes up. But they pushed forward with a renewed, fragile sense of purpose. They fed this new paid dirt into Sloofer, their trusty wash plant. When they did the first cleanup, everything changed. The SLES box wasn't just sprinkled with gold. It was loaded. This was it. The moment the gamble started to pay off. With a productive cut located, the team kicked into high gear. For weeks, Sloofer ran non-stop, averaging an incredible 145 ounces per week. The first big weigh-in was the moment of truth. Combining the hauls from both Sloofer and Big Red, the total was mind-blowing. 724 ounces of pure gold. That's over 45 pounds of gold worth nearly $1.4 million. The camp erupted in cheers. It was more than a start. It was proof that the gold was here and they had what it took to get it. It's easy to see a headline-grabbing weigh-in like that and think, wow, they hit the jackpot overnight. But that's missing the real story. When you peel back the layers, you see the weeks of brutal, spirit-crushing failure that came before. You see a crew on the very edge of giving up, covered in mud and exhausted. They turned a disaster into a fortune, but the season's not over. Was this massive weigh-in a sign of true success or just a lucky break?